Coach Rex Walters, Associate Head Coach for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, joins us today. Coach, I've been following your board coach X's and O's on Twitter during our quarantine. And so instead of me asking you maybe like a favorite play, instead let me ask you what kinds of things make a great play in your opinion?
What makes a great play? To me, you have to have multiple actions. You have to have pressure on the rim in some capacity, whether it's a post up, a drive to the basket, a pick and roll where you get downhill, and then you have options. So you want a layup threat, and then you want to have or a shot at the rim attempt, or because you've drawn defense and you cause an advantage for the offense, you get a quality shot. That to me is good offense.
You've coached for a long time. Do you like more sets, or are you running some sort of continuity or a combination of the two, or what?
Yeah, it's funny. So I grew up playing for Coach Williams, right? And I really loved that style of offense. And everything was fast, and everything was secondary break, and it was really reads. Right? You see the read react offense. You see different concepts out there. But the great thing about Coach Williams, and I've put in the box set, I've been talking a lot about the box set and Coach Smith's box. But the great thing about the time at Kansas was there was a great secondary break where everything that a team would try to do, there was a counter in our secondary break. So we played really fast. And he always talked about trying to turn secondary into primary. Well, you do that by running the floor, right, and pitching ahead, and, again, putting pressure on the rim. So when I coached as a head coach, we did that for a long time. And then I was very influenced by Stan Van Gundy, and we put in some of his stuff, and we got to more pick and rolls and more spacing and being open. So I'm a little bit of both. I think you have to have stuff when it's a dead ball or when momentum has changed, right? And you've given up maybe three or four baskets, and you want to make sure you get a quality shot. You have to have some sets in at that point as well.
All that to say, we're not actually talking offense today,
Yeah.
but I did want to give you and your Twitter account an early plug. So hopefully maybe you'll pick up a few more followers even before this interview ends. So you talked about Coach Van Gundy and some of the coaches that have influenced you. But when it comes to talking about a defensive philosophy, your defensive philosophy has been shaped by whom?
Well, Stan, it's funny. I was such a bad defensive coach when I was at Florida Atlantic and at USF. I really wasn't. It's funny, when I interviewed for this job, I said, Danny, please don't look at my defensive numbers as a head coach, because we were much different. I was influenced by Roy Williams, and that's not to say he's a great coach and a Hall of Famer and won national championship, but we were trying to play the way we played at Kansas. And the way we played at Kansas was great ball pressure, denying one pass away, trapping, blitzing pick and rolls, and we didn't have, even at FAU or at USF, the type of athleticism to play that way. At Kansas, he had some great players: Kirk Heinrich, Jeff Boschee, Drew Gooden, Nick Collison. I played with the Richard Scott and Adonis Jordan, some great players that could play that way, right, where we could guard the ball, like Adonis Jordan, Jacques Vaughn. They could really guard the ball. So then you can extend your defense and have more pressure. But we didn't have that type of guy or guys that could pressure the ball. So as I got to a chance to work for Stan, I saw that, okay, it's not pack line, but there's a lot of pack line principles. We're going to really protect the rim, protect the paint, and then chase guys off the three-point line the best we can. And that's kind of what I've morphed into. And I was just really fortunate working as a G League coach in Grand Rapids for a year, where I got to be there for Summer League and learn from Bob Byer, who's a phenomenal coach, a great coach. I think he's with the Sacramento Kings in Summer League. And then I got to learn from Stan in the training camp, and then working for the Pistons in 1 year. So that really changed the way I looked at defense, simplified it, more pulled in, more paint protection. It really helped me as a coach. That year in Detroit, we were the 10th best team defense. We got fired at the end of the year, but for me it was great. I learned that you don't have to have great defensive players, because there wasn't one great defensive, a lot of good defensive players, but not great. And yet we could still have a top 10 defense. And then I went to Nevada and worked for Eric Musselman, and they had great length, great size and athleticism. We still didn't deny our turnovers, our team defensive turnovers, like turning teams over, went down, but our rating went up. Because of our length, we could also switch pick and rolls 1 through 5 but we were still pulled in. And he listened to me a little bit. I mean, he's a really good coach, but he listened to some of my thoughts coming from Stan, and I thought it really helped us defensively. And even this year, we got a little bit better, not where we need to be, but we were much more pulled in. So I owe a lot of thanks to Stan. Guys like Bob Byer, that staff in Detroit taught me a lot about how you can be successful defensively with not having great length or great defenders and still be a very good defensive team.
If I saw correctly, you all jumped from like 108th in the country at Nevada there to like 35th, I think it was.
Yeah.
Like what if you could summarize it? I think you've already mentioned a couple of them, but like what are the biggest factors for that's 73 spots? Like that's a big deal. That doesn't just happen by we work harder. Like what were some things?
And the funny thing too was they really only had 3 returning players. I mean, they returned Cody and Caleb, really, really good. Okay, they're really good. 6'6", 1, 2, 3. Jordan Caroline, 6'6", 6'7". That went from playing the 5 to really now playing the 4 and the 3. And all the other players were new. So I think the biggest thing was they committed more to less switching. We were switch pick and rolls, but they were point switching and there was big gaps. They weren't going to deny nearly as much, and that was a constant struggle for Coach Musselman to get those guys to pull in, right, protect elbows and blocks, be great in transition defense. I think that's the biggest thing is we wanted to have 1s and 2s back. Saying that our 1 wasn't going to be Cody all the time. It was going to be Jazz Johnson. It was going to be Corey Henson. It was going to be guys that we determined were get-back guys. Like, shot goes up, get back, and let's start loading our defense. And the other thing, too, is we had great players. I mean, they had great players, and they bought in. I was listening to Stan speak. Anytime he has a chance to speak, I'll listen to him. And he says, your ability to have success is going to be determined by 3 things. And the first one's talent. All right, and Nevada had great talent. The second thing that he said was going to be your system. The system, what you do. The third thing is going to be your players' buy-in to that system, how you teach it, and do they believe it. And in Nevada that year, especially in the Mountain West, I think we lost 2 games that year, 2 games in conference, maybe 3. There was unbelievable buy-in by those guys. And it started with obviously Muss, the credibility, the ability to teach and coach, but it also goes with Cody, Caleb. They were really bought into it. They really wanted to win another championship and have a chance to make a run in the NCAA tournament.
So talking about Coach Van Gundy, I saw a couple weeks ago you had his 7 defensive musts. Can you kind of go through those and talk about each of those?
Yeah, would love to. And what I believe in. And the first thing we just talked about is it's sprint back, right? So depending on what you have with your defense, 1s and 2s, though, they should be back on the raise. You should literally see them turn and run, sprint back. The basket that you have should see their back. They should be sprinting back into the paint. 3s, if you're inside the 3-point line or on the weak side and have a chance to go get it, yes. If not, get back. Let's load it with 3. 4s, the same kind of thing. Like if you're in the paint, if you have a lane, go. And you have to be you got to coach that. 5s, you want to really go after it unless you're above the 3-point line. So the first part was sprint back. Let's load our defense. Let's make sure that they're playing against half-court defense as much as possible. You see a lot of NBA teams doing that now, and sometimes they have a couple great offensive rebounds that they let go a little bit, but for the most part, they sprint back. The second part is protect the paint, right? We want to have great ball pressure, but we want that ball handler to see elbows and blocks being covered, right? The gaps, the guys in the gaps ready to guard. Then you want to become a great closeout team, great close and contest team, great technique, sprinting out, getting to the chest of shooters. I always like to say, trying to take away the best thing they do, right, and then the second best. So for us, a big thing was always taking away strong hand drives. You see a lot of guys in the NBA, a lot of those guys can go both directions, but in college and high school, if you can take away a right-hand drive by a right-hand guy, you're going to be able to cause some things. So close and contest. The third thing was communicate constantly, right? We want to be talking. We want to be pointing. We want to be making sure that all 5 guys are on the same page in your pick and roll coverage, in your screening actions. If you do have switch situations, your communication's got to be early, loud, and constant. You've got to talk all the time. And then active hands. And when active hands, that doesn't mean reaching in. That means hands in the face, 2 hands up on the close, taking away vision, making sure off the ball We have our hands out, so we take away and we show more of the paint being covered. Really, really important to have active hands. And then you want to defend without fouling, right? So the number one way you score in any league is at the rim. It's the highest percentage shot. The second best percentage shot is the free throw, believe it or not. It's not the three-point line. It's the free throw line, right? So we want to make sure that guys are, and this is part of the active hands, walling up at the rim, not reaching in and bailing guys out on their shot or on their dribble. We don't want to put teams on the line. And the other thing, it really affects our offense because, again, the hardest way to score is in the half court. Well, if we foul, we have to play in the half court. And then the last part of it is box out rebound. You've got to be a high-level box-out rebound team to be successful. There's some physicality to that, and that's something you got to emphasize every single day.
I think that you said this in the post too, but going through a checklist and having a checklist like that is great, but getting them to do that is another thing, right? Like we can whiz right through it, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, those are great," but getting them to do it then. How do you do that? Are you doing a lot of 5-on-5? Do you do small-sided games? Do you do stations? What does your drill work look like?
It's interesting because you do want to drill certain things. You want to play some one-on-one. You want to work on your closeouts. You want to work on your angles of your closeouts. But you want to play a lot of 3-on-3. You want to play a lot of 4-on-4. You want to play a lot of 5-on-5. And you're constantly coaching these things. That's why they're the defensive must. Like when I was in Miami, towards the end of the season, we're going through a scouting report, right? And Coach Riley, for whatever reason, and I hate to ever say Coach Riley was ever wrong, but he was off on one. And all of the players were looking at each other like they couldn't believe it, right? Because at that point, he had done such a good job of coaching us every single day, and his staff, who had Stan Van Gundy, Jeff Bisdelic, Eric Spoelstra was just a video coordinator at the time, Bob McAdoo, great coaches. They knew what the things were every day that were being emphasized. So you have to emphasize these things every single day. When I was in Detroit, my job was to yell on every razor shot, "Get back, get back, get back." So my guys knew me as the get back guy. You have to emphasize those things, and you've got to, fight certain battles over the course, not fight, but get guys to buy in to those 7 musts. And if you do that, you start having a really good defensive team, and you get better and better over the course of the season. There is drilling. There's no question. But I also think, and I agree, that the more you can play, right, the more you can play, stop it for a brief second, make your 1 or 2 points, get back to playing again, emphasize it again, that's when you really start to get better. So I would too. If I ever got a chance to be a head coach again, it'd be more play than it would be drilling. I mean, we're going to do shell, of course. You're going to do those things, but that's 4-on-4, and just making sure you're emphasizing these things every day. There's technique things you have to worry about with pick and roll, with closeouts, with box outs. But at the end of the day, we're really blessed at Wake Forest. We got video that we can show them afterwards. So you're just constantly emphasizing these 7 things and just trying to drill it home every day.
High school coaches that listen to this may not have the advantage that we have at the college level, but do you, when you're playing that 4 and 5-on-5, do you have a coach that's responsible for defense that's emphasizing those things and offense for those things?
Stan was the best at it. So we had a big staff, and obviously high school teams usually have maybe 2, sometimes maybe 1, maybe 3, but whatever it is, I think you have to delegate, right? I think when I was at San Francisco, that was a tough thing for me. And I had some great coaches. Jeff Lender's now a head coach at Wyoming. Luke Wicks is at Pacific. They had a great season this year. Dave Rebo was just a Cal High Coach of the Year. Brent Cruz is now a head coach. Sundance Wicks is at Wyoming. And it was hard for me, but you have to delegate, right? You have to say, okay, hey, and Stan did a great job. I learned again from Stan. Rex, you've got transition defense. That's your deal. You've got to coach that at a high level for me. Tim Hardaway, we're talking about active hands and ball pressure. You've got to do a great job with our guards coaching that. Coach Byer kind of coached everything. Coach was that good, right? But, he would take one side, Stan would take another. Aaron, you're going to work on our box outs and rebound, right? Making sure when the shot goes up, you're yelling box out, box out, box out. So we had the ability to do that. If you have 2 guys, hey, one guy's got to coach the offense, one guy's got to coach the defense, and you've got to pick 2 or 3 things that you want to get good at. I think that's another thing as a coach. If I ever got a chance again, you're trying to get good at 2 or 3 things every single day. You're not trying to get rid of that, get everything up in terms of coaching everything, but you got to get good at 2 or 3 things every practice. for you to get better, because then you can hopefully move on to the next thing, moving down the line.
I haven't done it a long time, but I just have observed the coaches, and we're all like this control freaks to an extent. Like we want to, but so many things go overlooked. And if you can delegate and you have multiple eyes on things, then stuff doesn't get overlooked as well. Some of those details that could get overlooked, I want to go back and talk about some of those musts, because I'm sure as people listen to those, they had some questions, and I won't hit everything, but even talking about transition defense, have you seen the game change at all? You said 1 and 2 get back, protect the paint, but guys are running to the 3-point line now. Do you teach things any differently than you did maybe when you first started?
It's crazy because even, there's this big talk of spacing offensively and 3-point shooting, right? But even at the core, if you look at the numbers, right, layups are the most efficient way. So you have to sprint back to the paint, right? You've got to talk, you've got to point, you've got to get matched up. But again, it's rim first, right? It's foul second. It's 3-point line third. Now, obviously, you got to identify, and that's where scouting comes in. I'm doing the scouting thing on Wednesday, talking about what we do or what I've learned along the way. And you've got to identify who those 3-point threats are, but you've got to do it from being in the gap and being pulled in, and then knowing the ball's coming at me, I may have to get to him. The ball's being raised up to make the pass to him, I got to get to him, and that's when it gets to your closeouts. But, transition defense, the biggest thing is effort. You have to coach effort. You do. You have to every day. Like in every drill that we did at San Francisco, when we got better, was when the shot, even in dummy offense, 1s, 2s, and 3s, you're back. That's our only chance to beat Gonzaga. Get back and load the paint, and then talk and point, right? Get matched up, and then let's make them change the ball from side to side so we know we're playing against set defense.
So you mentioned closeouts, so let's go on to that. So closeouts, it seems to me like if there's a guy standing out there at the 3-point line, he can probably shoot it. Yeah. Are you just, trying to play guys? You said take away their main thing and then take away the second thing. Yeah. Like I said, if they're out there, they probably can shoot it. Are you teaching, short choppies, get to it and then take away something? Are you just be the second guy off the ground to contest the shot? Like what have you found to be effective in 2018, 2019?
I try to classify guys with certain terminology. Shooter, right? Straight shooter. We got to make him bounce it. We're closing out all the way to the chest. We're breaking down, basically at a length and getting to his chest with our hands up. We're going to make him bounce it without leaving our feet, right? So the shooter. A player, we're going to close really hard to a length because he can shoot it and he can bounce it, right? A driver, we're going to actually close short and take away those strong hand drives that I talk about. Because if you can take away the shot on players, right, and then you can take away what he does best, you got to make him go to his third or fourth option. But it's a sprint, and especially in long closeout, it is a sprint, and then you're breaking yourself down. You are keeping 1 foot on the floor. You see a lot of kids nowadays, they jump stop in their closeouts. It's one of the biggest things that I watch. Anytime both feet come off the ground, it's just the law of gravity, right? You can't move until you come back down. So I want them to break themselves down. I say break themselves. I try to stay away from chopping your feet, right? Because I've never seen a guy chop wood with their feet. So I try to say break down. You want to break yourself down, but 1 foot's got to be on the floor all the time until you get to your feet being set, right? Again, the technique is high hands all the way to his chest. Then we want to get back to a length and get a hand in his face. And I got that from Musselman. Muss was great about hands in the face. So that's kind of our technique, but that's also, we talk about in the scouting, what is he? Is he a shooter? Is he a player? Is he a driver? And then I get more specific. I say, hey, he's a shooter / right-hand driver. So we got to make sure that when we're closing out, we're taking away the right-hand drive as we get to his chest.
How is the communication taught and drilled?
Yeah, to me, I try to keep it really, really simple, right? So on every movement of the ball, there should be talk, right? So it should be simple. I got the ball. Ball. 3 times, early, loud, and constant, right? If I don't have the ball, I'm yelling help, right? If my man's setting a screen, I'm saying screen, right? If it's a pick and roll, it gets a little bit more complicated. The way we did it in Detroit was anything in the middle third, right? It was either weak or strong. Weak being we're forcing them left, strong being we're forcing them right. On the side of the court, any side pick and roll, it was, again, simple again. It was either middle, push them middle, or push them down, push them to the baseline. And again, those calls are going to be 3 times, and they're going to be repeated. Weak, 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 right? Strong, strong, strong. On a dribble handoff, our call was open. So the guy that was receiving the dribble handoff, as the ball was coming out, I'm calling out, let me through, let me through, let me through, or open, open, open. So open up, so I can either bust up the dribble handoff, or I can go between the ball handler, right, and the man that's guarding. So shooters, I'm going to get over the top. I'm going to try to bust it up. Drivers, I'm going to pick my path, if that makes sense. So there's like on every movement of the ball, we should have 5 guys talking. You know, in Detroit, we wanted to have a low man. So anytime that man was the furthest man from the basketball, he's yelling low, 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 low. So everyone knows I've got the basket. That also told the guy that was on the opposite elbow, right, I'm the highest, because we like to X out in those situations. The ball was skipped to the corner. So the guy would also say, I'm high, high, high. So you'd have a low, you'd have a high, you'd have a ball, you'd have, you know, a help and a help, or whatever the screening action was. But it was pretty simple. It was exactly what you were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes we either overcomplicate it or just kind of give up early on it. Is it just you emphasizing it constantly with your players?
So one of my favorite things that I like to do is we played a lot of 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 cutthroat. And this is the one way it made me delegate, okay, because I like to kind of do everything when I was a young coach. So I'd have 4 things, 4 emphasis that we'd have. Number 1 was going to be talk, right? All 4 guys or 3 guys on the court had to be talking the entire time. Ball, ball, ball. Help, 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 right? Shot, 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 because that's what we wanted when a shot was taken. The other thing was ball pressure, right? We wanted to have great ball pressure. We wanted to get to a length. The other thing was great jump to the ball. So I had one coach just coaching jump to the basketball, right? And the 4th thing was kind of the hard one. It was play personnel. So understand who you're guarding. If I'm guarding a driver, right, I'm going to close out short and I'm going to take away drive. If I'm guarding a shooter and the offense got a shot, that guy got a shot, they catch a shot, the defense lost. So the 4th thing was really play personnel. And in the drill, I liked it. We didn't emphasize rebounding. You didn't hear me mention rebounding. But if the offensive team got the offensive rebound, defense was off, right? Whether they scored the basketball or not, defense was off. And that's how we scored it. And it didn't help. It didn't hurt that we would run. The losers would run. The other guys would get water. So it was the thing our players liked the most, because we didn't coach the offense at all. But they started to realize we play the right way. We're going to break these guys down. They're going to get whistled off, because some possessions would be literally 3 seconds. If the guy handled the basketball and didn't say ball, 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 boop, no talk. You know, I'll tease one of my players. No talk, Angelo. Angelo was off, and then all of a sudden you see guys coaching each other. Freaking, you need to talk, my man.
That's good.
We're not losing because of you. You need to jump to the ball, Avery. That's not working. You know what I mean? So you want to have a player-led team as opposed to a coach-led team.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and talk about defensive rebounding since you brought it up. It's something that I've thought a lot about over the last year. I feel like in our minds as coaches, we have this ideal of what rebounding should look like. And let's go ahead and just keep it kind of on the defensive end, because it might look a little bit different on the offensive end. But because of the speed of the game, it doesn't always look like that.
Right.
And this is what I mean. So, you know, what my first question is, are you more concerned with teaching technique, and the technique being box out, hit them a certain way, turn it, or are you more concerned with pursuit of the basketball, just go get it, be aggressive? And then how do you practice those things when it comes time to actually get better at them?
Yeah, well, I'll say this. You have to teach technique. I think you have to. I had a player named Rashad Green. It's Danny Green's little brother. And he wasn't a great box out guy. We still taught him the technique. But at the end of the day, I tell him, Rashad, if you get it, I'm not gonna pull you out of the game. You know what I mean? So we're gonna teach hit. We always talk about hit and get. I wanted to have 2 forearms to the guy's chest. We wanted to be really physical. We thought that in Sundance, Wicks talks about all the time. You know, the game honors toughness. So we wanted to be physically tough, right? So we wanted 2 forearms to the chest, and then we wanted to ride him either direction that he went, with our forearm and with our hips, and drive that offensive player back if he went to the glass, okay? That was a big thing for us. If they're on the perimeter, we wanted to visually see our guys as we watch tape of them checking the shooter, or checking, not the shooter, but checking the weak side wing, the weak side corner. Is he coming, right? If he's not coming, we don't want to run in. I always talk about, we never want to freaking run in. We actually want to box out. We want to have as big a rebounding space that we can. So we talked a lot about clearing the paint. But I did, like I said with Rashad, I said, hey, I'm not going to kill you, right? I'm not going to pull you out if you don't box out, but you better get it. And he liked that rule. And he was a guy that could do that, because you also got to play to your players' strengths. He was a great get it guy, right? He wasn't a great box out guy. But I told him, I said, hey, you give up one, I'm going to be looking at you wrong. You give up another one, you might have to come sit next to me. So that's kind of the way I approached defensive rebounding.
Yeah, I found we had a guy just like that on our team this year who it would have been almost a waste of time to teach him to hold him accountable for it. Right. And he could just go get the ball. He could pursue it better than somebody else. But, that's one that coaches can debate at another time. Let's talk about ball screen coverage is another thing that we talk a lot about. It appears that based off of, you've already talked about where it happens on the floor, it might look a little bit different. But what determines for you guys there at Wake your coverages and what you're going to do?
Yeah, coverage is determined by who you're guarding, right? So if you're guarding a pick and roll guy, right, you're going to play probably more in drops, right? We like to be up at the point of the screen. We want the on-ball guy to see coverage, to see defense, to see bodies. So we wanted our bigs up, hand on the hip, right? Making his call early. We talked about on the first movement by the big to the ball. It's simple. It's either strong or weak. It's either middle or down. You got to make that call quickly, right? But we wanted our bigs up at the point of the screen and then dropping back. And in the drop, the rules are really simple. Stay in front of the ball, stay below the roll. So you're only going to contest at the rim. And if it gets to the rim, we call that a beer back. Like our guard would then take the big and try to ride him out, root him out on the box out. So that was our drop coverage. If you're guarding a pick and pop guy, right, you might play in switches, right? And we like to switch on context. So instead of calling strong or weak or middle down, we would just call out, in Nevada, we called touch. So we were going to switch on touch. So touch, touch, touch. Like in Detroit, I liked it better. We called it black. Black meant we're switching on contact. And so the difference is in a drop, when I hear a middle or down call, I adjust my stance. So I'm going to be at a length guarding the ball. I hear the call and I hear middle. I'm actually going to get into my guy and force it middle so I can get over that screen. I want to get as close and into my man as possible so I can get over that screen, because now the screener has a tougher time screening when you're closer to the ball. In a touch or black call, as we call it, switch on contact is what we call it. I'm guarding the ball now. I hear, and you got to have some toughness for this one, right? I hear black, black, black. I'm guarding the ball. Then when I get touched, we're switching on contact. I'm sorry I clapped. But we're switching on contact at that point. So that's what you do against straight pick and pop guys. You kind of have to pick your poison against pick and pop fives. Do you switch that? Because it's an easy read for the five. He sees the switch, he's going to roll down. We veered back a lot on that. Stan was talking about the other day, Milwaukee just decided, hey, we're going to play in drops and we're going to make teams beat us with threes. In the three-point era, right, we're going to make teams defeat us with contested threes. So you got to kind of pick your poison. You can also play in shows against pick and pop guys, and your technique has got to be really good. You got to be on the hip, inside the hip, at the point of the screen. You still got to make your call early, loud, and constant. But those are, and then you can blitz as well. If you want to just change tempo, you want to throw something different. Coach Nestor, who's a great coach, special assistant here, talks a lot about blitzing. Let's just change the tempo, change the pace. We're going to corral trap guys. That's all we did at Kansas. Like all we did, we blitzed every – that tells you how the game has changed, right? We blitzed every single pick and roll. I was watching the 93 Final Four with my son and my wife and all my kids. We were watching it, how different the game was. We were motion, 3 out, 2 in. There was always guys in the paint. It was hard to get to the hole, but we blitzed all pick and rolls. So it's amazing how the game has changed. But that's pretty much the pick and roll coach. We're gonna drop. We're gonna switch. We're gonna show. We're gonna blitz. Those to me are the basic ways that we like to guard it.
Do you like switching? Does it cause you problems because let's go to the next step, because most are going to try to just bury your guard. Yeah. And then I'm assuming that you're doubling the post.
It's funny, like we're at Nevada and it's crazy. We fronted the post all the time. It was a rule, and it was a thing that Coach Muss stressed every day. We had a guy named Trey that was a phenomenal post player, 6'11", built like a Mack truck, but athletic, could run. Just a great lob threat all the time. He never wanted to front. Muss was like, no, we front at Nevada, son, and he committed to it. So in switch situations, because we switched all pick and rolls. It was probably one of the reasons why some players didn't play. They couldn't switch. They couldn't guard the ball, right? Or they wouldn't front the post. Mm-hmm. You couldn't do those two things, you wouldn't play. But we had 6'6", 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", and then basically 7 feet, and all fives could, and we fronted the post. But I'll say that Jazz Johnson, who was one of the top 3-point shooters in the nation, 5'10", 5'11", maybe 6 foot, sorry, Jazz, he fronted the post, and they couldn't throw it in. And the other thing about it, we were pulled in. So that pass had to be great, and you also had great ball pressure. And that's the big thing with Coach Musselman. You always talk about hand in the face, right? Hand in the face, take away vision. So guys had a tough time feeding and throwing the ball over the top against those switches. So our team wasn't very good at it this year. We weren't good at switching, to be honest with you. But that Nevada team had the ability, had the athleticism, had the guys that they could really do it.
I feel like what you just said is probably something coaches hear and then overlook, but we want to talk a lot about what happens when the ball gets in there. We front the post, we 3/4, we bring help from the backside. But if you get ball pressure, you probably don't have to deal with any of that stuff.
It's a great – you said you hit it right on the mark. Like if you have great ball pressure and you can contain, you can do a lot of great things defensively. So, it's funny. I'm sitting there one time with Coach Horns. We're watching a guy that ended up being an NBA player. Right. And I'm sitting there and I'm not watching this guy, but I'm waiting for the next game. And Coach Williams, like, he just doesn't guard and pressure the ball enough for me. And he just moved on. You know what I mean? So he wanted guys that could really guard, especially at that point guard spot. You got to be able to pressure, don't get beat. Right. Yeah. I always say pressure, contain. If you can do that at a high level, the ball doesn't get to the paint a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. Let me talk about scouting. I know you've got something coming up for that. I don't know if you're going to be recording that or not. Now that you're Zoom. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so let me just you can do a brief practice run with me here. I asked this with Coach Hamilton at FSU about a week ago, and let me see if I can ask it so that you understand. When you're preparing for an opponent, ACC, let's say, are you spending a lot of time on their plays and on their style, or are you spending most of your time doing what you guys do and doing that throughout the whole year so that when you get to a specific team, you're ready to defend the actions that they do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. So I'll give you this example. We never changed at Kansas in '93. We never made adjustments. I think the one adjustment we ever made against Jason Kidd, we didn't blitz pick and rolls. But we blitzed pick and rolls, and we did it at a high level. And so that was Coach's philosophy. Hey, you're going to beat us. You're going to beat us on our terms and how we play. We're going to deny you, right? We're going to pressure the basketball. We're going to blitz all pick and rolls. We're going to play fast. If you have great talent, you can do that. Okay. If you have great talent, you can lay out your system, lay out your plan, and probably not have to make a whole lot of adjustments. But if you're not in that top 2 or 3 in your league, you better be able to make adjustments. And we didn't feel like this year that was necessarily the case. We had good talent, but obviously not great talent. So we did make some adjustments. We would try to take away what teams did best, right, within our system. Mm-hmm. And now it's just things that you emphasize. Hey, this is a really big point of emphasis right here, fellas. Like with Florida State, they play really, really fast, right? We better get 3 guys back on the shot. And it's funny, as I do my scouts, I find myself coaching the things that we emphasize every single day in practice. It's just a bigger point of emphasis. You may have 2 or 3 in-game adjustments that you may have, like an example on a baseline out of bounds play. They lift the 5 up to the ball side elbow, and that guy's a strong right-hand driver. We pushed everything middle all season long, right? That's where our help was. And on that play, I said, guys, this is an in-game adjustment, right? That guy wants to drive it right? We got to push it back to the same side because they're clearing the right side except for that corner shooter. We got to push him back to his left. We got to push him outside. And so, making sure that you walk through it, right? You show it on tape, and then you even drill it as you guard stuff live, that the guys know there's going to be a couple in-game adjustments I think you need to make to get better and give yourself the best chance to win. We did lose to Florida State this year by 10. He had a really good team, but we felt like we gave ourselves a chance. We played some zone against them. I think you have to make a few adjustments, but you also can't completely abandon what you're about.
Yeah. That was my next point. There's a fine line between adjustments and creating gimmicks in just a hope that you can somehow pull an upset or stay within. So when it comes to what you're telling the guys, again, a fine line between being so detailed and prepared as coaches versus overload and your guys just completely stop listening to you and they don't do anything.
Yes.
So what does that look like for you guys?
Well, number one, you have to talk to your team. Like, and Danny does a really good job of it. Like, what do you guys think about this? Right. I was sitting there and it was after I got let go at San Francisco. I'm sitting there and Steve Kerr lets me come to practice. Right. And they're watching tape. And Steve was like a master. Steve was like, Draymond, how do you want to play this situation? Cool. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, whoa, hey, that's pretty cool. And Draymond's like, hey, I think we can blitz that one in this situation, coach, coming out of a timeout, or hey, the big fella, I forget what his name was, like, hey, can you get a little bit higher up on that pick and roll? And he's like, yeah, I can do that. So he was getting their buy-in. And I think that's really, really important. You can have the best scheme. If they don't believe it, it ain't going to work, right? Yeah. So you've got to get buy-in from your team. You've got to, and that's why I think the clip tapes are so important that we have to make for our guys. We were pretty good in the second go-around against teams. We lost to Notre Dame at home, played really well on senior day, got them. We showed tape of, hey, this is why we have to do this. We lost to Clemson on the road. We had our best defensive effort against Clemson the second time around. So you'd like to get two, but hey, sometimes you got to settle for the split. But you got to get buy-in from your players.
As I watched preparing for this, just watching some film of you guys, I watch a defensive possession, and then I see you and some of the other assistants madly writing down on your notebooks as the ball goes to the other end. So that's something that usually coaches want to know about. What things do you track and what things are important for you all?
I think the biggest thing for me is especially when it's my scout, I want to have a good feel for what they're about to run. If it's out of timeout, if it's a baseline of bounds, I'm really watching them because I want to give my head coach a heads up. Hey, this is what they're doing. This is what they're running. So that's really what I'm looking at and writing down. We also track a lot with defensively. Are they getting to the paint on us? That's a big thing for us. Are they getting second shots? What's our transition defense looking like? And we'll do in game because we weren't great defensively. We got better, but we weren't great. We were always tracking, okay, what's better right now, zone or man, right? We got to do something to change momentum. So I was always looking over to a couple of our administrative guys because they kept track of that. I asked them, where were we at with man? Where were we at with zone? Because at the end of the day, I love man-to-man. What's going to help us win this game? Okay, what's going to give us the best chance? So that's why we were scrambling to write our notes. The other thing I would be writing down was just thoughts for Danny. At the start of the timeout, hey, you may want to think about this. Hey, this is what they're running a lot of in this situation. After timeouts, coach, look for this. I just want to try to help him because he's got 1,000 things going through his head during a game. I want to try to slow it down and just give him information that he could say yes to, he can say no to, but at least he has the information.
Yeah, talking about that in-game adjustments and a timeout, for a lot of high school coaches, you see commercials when you're watching the game. Being a part of them, I remember the first time that I was a part of a televised Division I game, and the timeout starts, and it kept going, and it kept going, and it kept going, and we were ready to break the huddle, and they were like, no, you still got another minute left, and we were like, all right, well, and then going forward, we used our time a lot better. So I think everybody sees the coach's huddle. Yeah. So organizing that, and then what you guys are actually telling each other. Yep. What you're going and telling the players, kind of break down what that looks like.
So the first thing that happens is we'll huddle up, right? We'll huddle up, and I'm always watching the defense, right? So I'm talking about, hey, what are we doing in our pick and roll coverage? Are we executing our pick and roll coverage, or do we need to change it, right? Matchups. Are there matchups out there that we don't like? Making sure, and then I'm giving that information to Danny. All right. If there's maybe sometimes a thing offensively I might see, but I try to stay away from that because, Randolph has an offensive thought. Steve has offensive and defensive thoughts. So I want to give him one or two things that I think is really important. I don't want to give him 15 things. He's got 1,000 things going on in his head. He's got to worry about minutes. He's got to worry about fouls. He's got to worry play calls. He's got to worry about what they're running. So, hey, I'm going to try to give him one or two things to try to help him. And that's it. And I think Chill's the same way and Wood. It's funny. We'd get in timeouts, and the best thing I'll say is, watching Coach Riley, and then watching Stan. Like, there was never wasted talk. We would sit there sometimes, and he would sit down. He'd look at all of us and just relax, right? We'd get to the last 15, 20 seconds of the possession. He'd write up the play he wanted to run, or he called out the defensive coverage, boom, and we broke. And he just wanted guys to relax and catch their breath, as opposed to continually overloading guys with information, right? Because you and I both know, and Coach Yoshikawa, Danny Yoshikawa should say this: busy minds equals slow feet. Okay,
sure, that's good.
So Coach Riley wanted to keep it in some ways simple, right? This is how I'm going to change momentum with this play. Or hey, in this coverage, we're gonna double Shaq on the catch, or we're gonna double Shaq on the bounce. But it would be one or two, maybe three things, right, to really give his team, to try to give them an advantage, as opposed to ripping them, telling them what they're doing wrong. We need to, like fire and brim. That stuff doesn't always work nowadays. You got to give them direction, right? You got to figure out what's going to get them to play at a higher level.
At the end of a game, or even if you're going into into a halftime, let's say at the end of a game, you look back on things, or look back on the end of a first half, and you say, that was a good defensive performance because we did what?
To me, it's always the same things. We protected the rim. We protected the rim at a high level. We kept them off the line, and we got three-point shooters off the three-point line. And I said, if I would add a thing, it was usually, hey, we rebounded at a high level. The things that I always would worry about that would kill us were turnovers. Like turnovers and bad shots. Like I always say to our, to our team and to our staff, I was like, guys, it don't matter what defense we playing. If you're turning the ball over, you're taking bad shots. I was like, so we need to understand that. So those were kind of the things. And it's funny, I would talk to Stan when I was a G League coach. I was like, Stan, I'm saying the same things over and over and over again. He's like, yeah, because those are the things it takes to win. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you just got to figure out a way to get your teams to do it.
I know that probably sounded for some like a stupid question, but you said exactly what I wanted you to say. I feel like this, sometimes we overcomplicate it, or we want to come up with something new every time. And what ends up happening is, the old adage, your team knows what's important by what you emphasize. And if you're constantly coming up with new stuff, they don't have any idea what's important. But I did, by the end of the year, there were a couple times where we'd walk in the locker room and we were like, you got anybody want to lead this? Because you guys already know what we're going to say with this, right?
Yeah. Well, I talked about it before, and I remember I was coaching at FAU, and I want to say it was either Wimp Sanderson, right? He coached, I want to say at Alabama. He was a really good coach, coached great teams. He said, Rex, people always said I wasn't much of a coach, but I got good players, and I was okay with that. So the first thing is, all of us coaches, we have to figure out a way to get our talent level up. If you're a high school coach, what are you doing to promote your program to get players that want to go there, right? Is it camps in the summertime? Is it fall leagues? Is it summer leagues to get kids in the gym and want to play for you? If you're a junior college or college, you got to recruit. You got to recruit at a high level and get really good players that fit what you're trying to do, that you want to coach. And then it's going to come down to your system, and then your teaching of the system. I thought I heard that literally maybe last week. And it was by Stan, who I have the highest amount of respect for. And I was like, how simple is that? Yeah, you know what I mean? Fantastic. Like, you got to be able to coach, yes, but you better have good talent. You better have a good system in place. And if you do that, you give yourself a chance to have really good success.
Awesome. Before I let you go, I usually ask this of all my veteran coaches, but if you could go back and talk to 20-year-old Rex Walters, what would you say?
Oh, man, I have so much to say.
One thing connected to maybe your coaching career.
Yeah, I would say that, and it would be what Coach Smith would always say: applaud the actions you want repeated. And I say that because as a young coach, I was so worried about correcting mistakes. And I think good coaches, they applaud the actions they want repeated, so guys want to do more for them. And so that's what I would do over again. That would be my advice to me.
Awesome. But one more time before I let you go, where can people find more about you and connect with you?
My Twitter page, it's I want to say it's at, I don't even know what it is, but I'm on it all.
At Coach Rex Walters. I should have just done this. I didn't prepare you for this question. I prepared you for all the other ones, but this.
Yeah, and I'm on Instagram as well. I'm trying to figure out what my name is on that. Obviously, you can see I'm really, just Rex Walters, Wake Forest men's basketball. You can find me on there. That's more about family. But if you want to find stuff on basketball, me talking about it's really my Twitter page. I am doing some Zoom meetings now. I'm going to try to do more. Hopefully, it'll end because this quarantine will end. And then I can get back to doing what I want to do. But I love talking basketball. Obviously, hopefully you can see that. I love coaching. So this gives me a chance. Thank you for this opportunity to come talk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. That's Coach Rex Walters, Wake Forest Associate Head Coach. Coach, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.